Alisha message me. So, welcome to I want to call it the second episode of The Naked Truth, but we've really been going for a little while now. The Naked Truth, where we strip back the layers, uncover the truth, and bring awareness to the things that are unspoken, unseen, and that we actually just don't want to dive into. So I'm just going to bring this beauty on. I have the incredible Alisha Rose Kruger with me here today. She is, I love this woman. As you can tell, I think this is the third live we've done together. I'm just figuring out how to bring her on. Let me see. I can wave to her, but it just won't bring... It won't let me bring her on. Let me have a look. I don't know what is going on. The joys of technology. I think you would think that by now I would have this down pat. For some reason. Yay, she's joined in.
Watched our other two lives, then you can jump over. She tells all about her beautiful background. Hello!
I was trying to get on my desktop and it's not working, so give me 1 second to set up my tripod for this.
Totally fine. Yeah, so for those of you...
times I jump on live, there's always like technical things like my phone's not the right way, or it's like... Yeah.
I know. I was just saying the same thing. Like, I find that there's always something that comes up, and I don't know why, because I've done this so many times. But anyway, that's okay. All good. All good.
All right. I think we should be all good now.
Yay. Yay. How are you?
I am amazing. I'm having the best morning.
And welcome. Thank you for jumping on. Everyone should know who you are. I've just been like this. I think this is like our third live together. I've done anyway.
Like yeah.
I was thinking about this morning. I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's a third live. So, I won't go too much into your background, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I haven't done any of that, so I'm going to let you quickly, let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Yeah, amazing. So my name is Alisha Rose Kruger. I am a feminine embodiment and menstrual cycle coach. So in practice, that looks like a lot of things. It's workshops and events and yoga classes and online coaching and online programs. And I also do a one-on-one healing practice called holistic pelvic care. So it takes all kinds of forms, but at the heart of it, it's really about guiding women back to their own power, back to the wisdom of their bodies, helping them tap into the superpowers of their menstrual cycle so that they can really thrive and be the most radiant version of themselves in all areas of their life, from their health to their business to their relationships, all of it.
And it's so amazing. I've actually had some cycle coaching with you in the past, and it just completely gave me so much perspective on how I was working my business that wasn't working, and it just completely blew my mind. So I love what you do. Can you just drop a quick, I won't go too much into it, but how did you get into this? Because I think it's really important for people to really hear, it's in our other lives, and I'll see if I can link them in, but if you could just give a little story of how that happened.
So the reason why I got so interested in cycle work is because my cycle was a total mess. You know, as a young girl, when I first got it, it was like crippling period pain, migraines, nausea, vomiting, all of that stuff. So I got put on the pill pretty quickly to mask all of those symptoms. I was on it for about 8 years, and around the age of 20, started getting into health and wellness, started learning more about what the pill was actually doing to my body, which I had no idea. And like there was a lot of like a sense of betrayal and anger around that, which is like nobody's fault. I mean, like my parents, the GP, they were all doing the best they can with the information they had. But I started to kind of awaken to the effects of what I'd been putting in my body. And so I decided to come off it. And because, it really only masks symptoms that we had. Everything that was going on for me at 13 was exacerbated by years of being on synthetic hormones and all that does to your body. And so it took for me, I would say, around 3 years to get a regular cycle back. And, you know, one of the first things that happened to me when I came off the pill was I got post-pill acne. So I had really awful cystic acne. For me, that was the main driver in starting to learn more about my hormones and how my body worked, because being a 20-year-old who was used to being really confident and not wearing any makeup, and like to go from that to having a face full of cystic acne where it pretty much took over my life. Like I became obsessive in the search for knowledge of how to heal that. And so that was kind of the gateway for me. And then I obviously started learning more about my hormones and my body. And then that kind of was combined with around the time that I did my yoga teacher training. And so I started to then learn more about the energetic and emotional side of the cycle and the womb and our creative power as women and all of that stuff. So for me now, there's very much like, yes, it's still my work with the menstrual cycle is still a physical practice, but it's also very much emotional, creative, and spiritual. Like I think it affects all areas of our life. So yeah, for me, it was my own healing journey, and I sort of unlocked this. I was describing it to someone the other day, saying like the version of myself that I was as a teenager up until my hormones kind of balanced out was kind of like a shadow of the woman that I am now. I feel like tapping into my cycle, healing my body, really learning to harness those gifts and to step more into my feminine power has completely changed who I am. And life is just so much more joyful and connected and embodied, and yeah, it's changed the game for me. So then I got to the point where I couldn't not share it with everyone.
Yes, completely. And I love that because I know you and I do similar work, so I just love everything that you do. And hello, Gabby. Hello, Brooke. Hello to Robbie. Guys, if you've just jumped on, say hi. If you would love to ask Alisha a question, then please feel free to drop it below, because I feel like some of the things that we might be talking about today, sometimes not everyone knows all the little bits and pieces, because it is quite an area that we can become disembodied and disconnected from our womb, our body, our feminine power. What even is that? So yeah, let's drop into a few of those things. What is, you know, essentially our womb, or where is it, and the feminine power? Like, what are all these things?
So your womb is your uterus. So if you place your hands on your lower belly, you're placing your hands over your womb. It is obviously where we have the potential to like nourish and birth a baby, but energetically it's also where we nourish and birth all of our creations. It's the home of our creative power. If you're familiar at all with the chakras, it's related to the sacral chakra. So very much related to expression and pleasure and sexuality and creativity and all of those beautiful things. Feminine energy is a really interesting topic because, so like, here's my really simplified take on that. Like when I talk about stepping into your feminine power, it's not that I'm shaming or disregarding the masculine, because I definitely think you need both. But my experience with knowing so many women and with my clients and myself is that a lot of us, we over rely on the masculine, and we spend too much time in our masculine because we're taught that that is what's going to, you know, allow us to achieve success. So the masculine is very much linear. It's about doing, it's about being active, it's about expressing energy out into the world. Yeah, it's very much what's glorified in society about like, we've got to be productive, we've got to get stuff done, we've got to have tangible results. Whereas the feminine is more about being and receiving. It's more about, the feminine to me is like a really, I want to do this movement when I talk about it, like really dynamic and flowing. It's creative energy, it's receiving, it's nourishing. It is, yeah, they're both so important, and we get to dance between the two of them. And that's more about what I teach. It's not about how do we embody the feminine at the exclusion of the masculine. It's about how do we bring in more of those feminine qualities, like learning to work with the cycle, learning to embrace rest, learning to trust your body wisdom, learning to lean into your intuition, learning to honor your body. You know, how do we recognize that there are times for expression and times for, you know, receiving inspiration? There are times for being really active and energized and out in the world, and there are times for resting and nourishing and replenishing your energy. So it's really about finding more of the balance, because I think most women don't have a lot of trouble with being in their masculine. So yeah, for me, like I mean, we could have a whole conversation just on that, but it's about how do you embody your power as a woman, essentially. And for me, the cycle is at the heart of that.
I love that. So one of the ways, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I'm just like, for me, a visual of the masculine and feminine dance is always like, you know, the river is essentially the feminine flow, and the masculine are the banks that hold that river, because you can't have the river without the banks to hold it, but you can't have a bank without just like a dryness of nothing in it kind of thing. So that's, I love that so much. And how would you I guess, like, why is it important to know about these things? Why is it important for us to understand that we as women have this feminine power that isn't necessarily in a masculine driven way? There is power in the rest, and there is power also in addressing our cycles and all that sort of stuff. So maybe even that's two questions, but why do we need to know this?
Oh, so many reasons. At the heart of it, it's really, I think, as a woman, in order to step into your full potential and your full radiance and your full joy and your vibrant health, you can't ignore the cycle, because that is the biological rhythm, the creative cycle that rules everything. Like for men, it's a 24-hour hormonal cycle, which is why they work really well on quite a more of like a structured routine, doing the same thing at the same time every day. But for women, our cycle is 28, 30 days, however long your cycle is. And it's, for me, I think of it like when you're not working with your cycle, or when you're not paying any attention to it, everything kind of feels like trying to swim upstream. Like you're trying to do things when then maybe they're not your natural strengths. We push ourselves when we're exhausted. We don't take time to rest. We don't take time to nurture ourselves. We don't necessarily understand that shifts in our physical energy or our emotional energy are related to our cycle. And so then we don't have the structures or the rituals in place to really support ourselves to thrive. Or because we're not working with the cycle, we're maybe experiencing a lot of premenstrual symptoms like cramps, mood swings, low libido, acne, all of those things. Those are all messages from your body that something is out of balance. And when you shift that and you start to lean into embracing your cycle, so there are 4 different phases or seasons of the cycle, and each of them have quite distinct energy, and you notice those changes. Even if you haven't particularly paid a lot of attention to your cycle, you'll know that there are times in the month where you have more energy and more confidence, times in the month where you're more tired, and that's just kind of the start. But if you can learn to work with that and to kind of sync certain things in your life with times in your cycle where those are your natural strengths, and then put things in place to really support yourself through kind of vulnerabilities of each phase of the cycle, then everything just, it's like almost like you just let go and you start to float downstream, and like there's just so much more joy and ease and flow, and it allows so much more space for us to really fulfill our own potential. I think that's really the heart of it. And you learn to, like, it's almost like your inner rhythm becomes the drum beat that you live by, rather than looking at what everyone else is doing, because it's so easy for us to, like, I don't know about you, like right now I'm on cycle day 12. Like, where are you at the moment?
So I'm at the moment 5 or 7. Yeah, it's not far in.
Yeah. So it's like maybe I would compare myself to you. Like, say if you're on cycle day 5, you're just coming out of your period, you're in a winter, so your energy is still very much rising. Whereas for me, I'm like almost at the peak of my cycle. I'm about to ovulate. So I have like all the energy, all the creativity. I'm coming into that superwoman phase. And then there's probably another woman watching who maybe has her period or is in her premenstrual phase and is feeling a totally different energy. And when we can understand that, and when that becomes a part of daily conversation, there's less comparison, and there's just a lot more permission and self-kindness and self-love, because we understand that we are cyclical. We are like essentially, 28 different women, 28 different days of the cycle. And our tendency is to like feel that kind of superwoman energy that comes around ovulation, which is the most, the time in the cycle where we have the most masculine energy. We're very creative, very confident. We can be really generous with our energy and our time. We feel like we have everything to give. And then the rest of the cycle, we're kind of measuring ourselves against that, and we're not that. And so then we find ourselves lacking. We feel like we're not good enough. We're not producing enough. We're not, meeting everyone's needs. And when we can learn that all of the phases of the cycle have their own, innate superpowers, which most of us don't learn about, and so we don't see the value in them, then all of a sudden, there's so much more, self-acceptance. It's like a homecoming, to come home to the wisdom of your body and to trust in that rhythm, and to trust that there are, gifts in each phase of the cycle that we get to embrace. One is not better than the other. Ovulation isn't better than having your period. It's just different. It's just a different season.
Yeah. And one of the big things that came up for me when I was coaching with you around this, and which you've kind of beautifully portrayed in what you've just said, is you have that acceptance around where you're at during each cycle and each day. Because I remember there were days in my cycle where I used to wake up and be like, oh my God, like I'm hating on everyone. This is how I feel, getting really angry. And you're like, so what are you not accepting around, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, it has brought so much awareness around the fact that, I was comparing, essentially where I was 3 days ago to, or today to where I was 3 days ago. And having that acceptance releases so much stress, releases all this judgment, releases all these expectations, and allows us to sink into that flow of where our body actually is and that rhythm that it's beating at that time, which for me was huge, absolutely huge. And yeah, I think it's really huge for a lot of women as well to have that sense of not only acceptance, but to also be able to tap into that rhythm that our body is always sending us at every time. It's huge. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like I don't even know where to start.
Why don't we give some practical examples of what you just talked about? So
totally.
I'm going to mostly speak to the premenstrual phase, because I know for a lot of women that's where the most challenge is. So to give some examples of things that you could perhaps bring into your awareness to be a little bit more gentle with yourself. So the premenstrual phase, or the inner autumn in the seasons, is basically like the last week of your cycle before you get your period. And it is associated with the archetype of the wild woman. And I'm sure we can all relate to this, feeling that quite turbulent, chaotic energy a lot of the time. But the thing is, and I mean, I used to absolutely hate and dread this phase of my cycle. Like if I had never had to have my premenstrual phase again, I would have taken that offer. And now I really, really love this phase of the cycle. And, a big piece of that is that I've cleared a lot of my hormonal imbalances and things that were creating a lot of the premenstrual pain and cramps and things like that. So there's a lot more joy in that phase for me now. But, to speak to some of the vulnerabilities of that time, like one of them is that it's obviously the point in the cycle where our energy is waning. So the closer we get to our period, the more our physical energy decreases. And even just knowing that allows you to be a lot more gentle with yourself, because I think so often, when we do have that mindset of this is what I do in a week, or this is what I do in a day, for me, it used to be like, I go to the gym this many times per week, and on Tuesday I go to pump class, and on Thursday I go to spin class, and that's what I do. And it doesn't matter how my body's feeling or how tired I am. This is just what I do. If we can know and accept that there's like a really good biological reason for why we don't have as much energy during that time, then we get to tap in and go like, okay, well, what kind of movement is going to serve me? Is it going and doing a HIIT workout, or is it maybe going for a walk out in nature? And understanding that there's nothing wrong with you for the fact that you have less energy than you did a week ago. It's just a different time in your cycle, and your body is using that energy for other things at that time. And it's totally okay to do a kind of exercise that is less intensive, but is more honoring of your body. Similar thing applies to, our mental and physical, our mental and emotional energy. Like, we tend to have less mental stamina and less focus the closer we get to our period, especially in the last 2 to 3 days before we bleed. there's this phase that two of my mentors, Alexandra and Shani from Red School, they call this phase the void. And it's like, it's almost that feeling, and if you're paying close attention to how you're feeling each day of your cycle, you'll feel this shift. It's almost like you separate from the outside world, and it's kind of like you've dropped into your inner winter or your period, even though you haven't started bleeding yet. And for me, it feels like my body is here in the physical realm, but my mind is kind of like floated off somewhere. And the chances of me getting anything done that requires any kind of epic concentration or focus or creativity is basically zero. Like something that, I'll give you an example of like writing a sales page. If I'm to do that in a summer, it would probably take me like half an hour. If I was to try and do that the day before my period, I would probably sit there all day typing and deleting and not being able to articulate what I wanted and getting frustrated because I'm not creating anything. And so I've learned that 2 days before my period, it's not a great time to write a sales page or launch an event or do an artwork or whatever it is. That's the time where I get to do really easy things like business admin that doesn't require a huge amount of energy that I can just do without thinking about it. But in the past, when I didn't make that connection, I'd be sitting there being like, well, last week I worked 10-hour days and I got so much done and I was like this powerhouse, like what's wrong with me? I'm such a failure, you know, I'm not creating anything, I'm worthless, all of that stuff would come in. And then the premenstrual phase is also the time when our inner critic can be the loudest. And so then the critic would come in being like, yeah, you're such a failure, maybe you should just quit and like give up, you should just go and get a job, like all of that stuff would come up. And it's this really vicious cycle. And even just knowing like, okay, so my energy is lower, I get to be more gentle with myself, there's nothing wrong with me because I'm not being so productive today. And then when that inner critic comes in, then you get to have a dialogue with it and know, like, okay, the inner critic is here because I'm in my inner autumn, my premenstrual phase. It's the time when one cycle is coming to an end and the other one is about to begin. So naturally, it's a time where we get to reflect on the past cycle. It becomes very clear what's working and what's not. And that's often why we can be quite ruthless in like setting boundaries and speaking our truth during that time in our cycle. And so we get to see the inner critic for the gift that it is, which is showing us maybe where we're out of alignment. And knowing that it's showing up because you're in that phase of your cycle, you get to kind of take what it says with a grain of salt. Does that make sense?
Totally. And we've actually just had a question come through because I think it's really important. It's, you know, it's beautiful to have this support for the women. And I love this so much because I think it's really so important for us women to know about our cycles and how we also get to relate to ourselves during each phase. And the question that just came through was from a male, and he said, is there a chart or something that we could have as men to know, you know, perhaps when to go for a hike with our, you know, with our woman, or, you know, when to do certain things during certain times, obviously to support her, which I think is so amazing, so beautiful. And I think that's a really big thing to speak into as well, about around how, you know, men as men, as the partner, how can you, you know, perhaps support your woman, or even as the female, how can you speak into it with your partner and have that understanding? Or so how can you speak into it with your partner? How can the men support the female? And also perhaps is there like a way that you can, as a female, create a chart around, you know, when you can best go for hikes and when you just need to go outside and walk? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so I have a few things I want to say on this. The first one is that this is a question that keeps coming up, so I'm going to create something for men that's coming. Yes. It's in the works. And I think like it's just really beautiful to presence that most men want to support the women in their lives. And so we don't have to, like, I mean, and this is generally speaking, like often there's a lot of like shame around our periods, and so we don't speak about them, and it's so important to make our cycle a part of daily conversation. And I mean, like, you can start off with speaking to some of your closest sisters, but also involving the men. Like for me, my husband now, he and I started dating right around the time that I came off the pill, so he's kind of been there for this whole journey. And what I've learned is that the more that I get to know myself and the more that I just make that a part of daily conversation, he knows, like, during my premenstrual phase, I want more time to myself. and he's not going to take that personally because I've communicated like, this is the time in my cycle where I'm just more introverted, I need more rest. It's not that I don't want to hang out with you, it's not about you, it's just because I need time for me. And so I've communicated that with him. So that's one thing actually that is probably like a really great tip for guys, is that when she's coming up to her period, she's going to be more withdrawn, she'll need more time to herself, and if she doesn't get it, that's when like a lot of that emotion can start coming up, because it's almost like when we give all of our energy away and we don't get the time that we need, which is a lot in our premenstrual phase, that resentment, that anger, that wild woman energy starts to kind of bubble up to the surface. And that's when, you know, something small like you didn't take out the rubbish, like that's going to create like this explosion of us being like, you don't appreciate me, you didn't, like, you're not doing enough around the house. All of those kind of unmet needs that we've sort of glossed over during ovulation because we feel so optimistic about everything can kind of come up. So yeah, I think probably the main things that I would say, like starting out, would be know that she needs a lot more time to herself, and that a lot more like tenderness during her premenstrual phase. A lot of women during that phase, because our progesterone is elevated, we really want to be like taken care of. We want more physical touch. We're more in like a nesting space where we want to take more time at home. Yeah, we're really starting to kind of, our energy starting to wind down, and we're wanting to sort of turn inward. And I know for me and a lot of my clients, like we just want more like cuddles and physical touch, and to feel really nurtured and taken care of during that time. The other thing would be like around her period, anything you can do to lighten her load, like telling her that the washing is taken care of, making dinner for her, just things that are going to allow her space to rest, and really honor that that's a time where her physical energy is at its lowest. That's a time when women are really tapped into their intuition, and so to be able to take space to just be with themselves and really spend time alone and spend time resting and replenishing and filling her cup. Anything you can do to make that happen, if it's like taking the kids out of the house for half an hour, or like I said, making dinner, or making sure the cleaning's done, or, you know, whatever it is, giving her space, saying like, hey, I'm going to do this, take half an hour, take 10 minutes, take a whole day. Like, no woman is going to say no to that around her period.
Totally. And I think that's such a beautiful topic. You know, I think it's so amazing that we're talking about this, because it's not just a female thing, you know, especially when you're in a relationship. Hey Megsy. Okay, so Megan just says, I use the wall calendar to plan forward around my cycle. Works a treat for planning. Awesome. Yes. And, you know, if maybe even if you are a male, the big thing that I've noticed come up is having, I guess as a partner, having the platform to speak into, for your partner to speak into this, because I know as females there can be so much shame held around, you know, our bleeding and all that sort of stuff. So having the platform there, and, you know, even if guys don't understand it necessarily, but being open to speak into those different, you know, feels. Even it doesn't even have to be around the period, but, you know, how do you feel, or, you know, that sort of stuff. And I think it's also around, sorry, go.
I was just going to say, like, for men, I think it's important to know, it's my battery. It's important to know that a lot of women have had experiences with men which have created like maybe mild trauma around speaking into their period. Like, I know so many women who, like, maybe you went to be intimate with your partner when you were bleeding and you got told it was disgusting, or they didn't want to be around you, or you got told that like you were crazy because you were premenstrual. And there's a lot of, and it's a societal thing too, like we've been shut down or discouraged from talking about this. Like it's not embraced in the larger kind of population as something that's really normal. So like you said, giving your partner a platform to talk about it, letting her know that you want to know, asking the questions like, you know, how can I support you? Or like, when is your period due? Like, can we make sure we don't make a lot of commitments around that time? Or like, I'll make sure, you know, whatever it is, just opening that dialogue. And, you know, you don't have to know what she needs, but you get to ask her what she needs. Say, like, I watched this live talking about how women need different things at different times of their cycle. I really want you to tell me so that I can learn, so that we can be like, you know, happier and more connected in our relationship, because it does create that when you open that dialogue. And the other thing I wanted to mention, there's an app called MyFlow, so MYFLO, that women can download, and it's a period tracker app, but you can pop in your partner's email address, and then at each phase of the cycle, so 4 times a month, you'll get an email, and it'll say like, your partner is at this point in her cycle. This is maybe what you should keep in mind if you're having sex, like, because our libido and our desires change depending on what time of our cycle we're at, because our hormones are changing so much. Like, this is what kind of date night she might appreciate. This is kind of what's going on with her. And so that app's really great, because you do get the notification kind of like once a week, being like, hey, this is where she's at. This is how you can support her. This is, you know, how she's going to thrive. And really practical things, like I said, like, what kind of foreplay is going to be great? Is she going to need a lot? Is she going to need not that much? You know, is she going to prefer to stay in or to go out and be social? Just really simple things like that. So yeah, MyFlow is that app, and it's one that I really love.
Yeah, I love MyFlow. I use that one. It's amazing. Yeah, and I really love that way of, you know, supporting the partner. I think that's really beautiful for the male, and also to know that, you know, as a female receiving that from their partner, it's going to, I would think, make them want to be even more connected to you, more like the benefits are going to be like such a, you know, perhaps when she's finished her period or something, there's going to be a sense of deeper connection, intimacy, and support felt from her having the partner lay that platform down. So she's, you know, going to want to come and pour into you once she's, you know, finished. So I think that's
exactly.
Yeah, I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and also, like, when we, just really simple things, like when we rest during our period, we have so much more energy, we're so much more generous, our hormones are more healthy, so our libido is higher, so we're going to want to, like, you know, have more sex and be around you more and be more connected. When we don't embrace the inner winter, the period, we don't experience the highs of ovulation and all the beautiful gifts that come with that. So, you know, our period is really a barometer for our wellness. So if our cycle is regular, our period is healthy, we're resting during that time, we're ovulating on time, and we're experiencing the fullness of all 4 of the inner seasons, like, that's when we're going to thrive the most. And then we're going to be able to show up as our fullest selves in our relationship, in our sex life, in our work, and all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to recap on all of that, because that's a huge amount of information, basically for a male, having the platform to speak into for their partner, letting them know that you want to support them, asking them what it is that you can support them with, for example, taking out the rubbish during certain periods of time, asking them, cooking them dinner, so helping them in specific ways. And yeah, perhaps even downloading that app so that you can get emails when they are actually experiencing their, you know, their period. And also then knowing that you can organize hikes and whatnot when she's out of her period and all that jazz, basically. Yeah, awesome.
And I know, like, a lot of women do, like, especially like if in a family setting with kids, like, it's there on the calendar, so they know, like, which times they're going to be superwoman, which times we're going to try and not schedule a lot of things around. And, you know, I've got a lot of clients who are mums who, and this goes for kids too, it's just keeping the conversation open, making it a regular part of life, because when we don't share it openly, it becomes kind of this thing that lives in the shadows, where there's all that shame and guilt and it's an inconvenience. I feel guilty because I'm not showing up in the way that I should. Like, all of that stuff comes up. So the more that we can have this conversation with our friends, with our families, our kids, our partners, the more it just becomes like a second nature. It just becomes this intrinsic part of the way that we operate and structure our lives.
Yeah, perfect. So what's happening for you at the moment that you're really like, I guess, what is really real for you right now within this space? Because I feel like there's something really juicy that you'd love to speak into, and I'd really love to share.
Right, I'm just conscious of my battery notifications because I wasn't expecting to be using my phone, but I think for me, the thing that I really want women to understand is that the health of your cycle yes, it relates to hormones and your liver and your endocrine system and your physical body, but your emotional health is also a big piece. You can't separate the two. That's something that I think a lot of women don't understand. So for me, like in my own experience, what this looked like was, you know, healing myself coming off the pill. I kind of healed like maybe 85% of my symptoms, but I was still having long cycles. I was still experiencing like 10 days of cramps before my period. I was still experiencing breakouts. And when I discovered, you know, somatic practices, so when I say somatic, what we mean is practices that combine movement and breath and sound to shift energy in the body, because emotional energy, when we don't express it, basically gets stored in our body. And for women, a lot of it is around the pelvic bowl, around the womb, around your hips. Like that's why we get a lot of tension around that space. That's why, like, you know, often the energy gets quite stagnant there, and so then it manifests as cramps and long cycles and things like that. When I first discovered somatic, like, embodiment practices, the first time I did that, and that was like specifically focused around releasing anger from the body, my cycle shortened down from, at that point, 41 days was the regular cycle for me because it was still long. Within the space of from one cycle to the next, my cycle shortened from 41 days down to 30 days. And I went from having 10 days of cramps to being like, oh, I've got some cramps, and my period literally arriving that day. So the emotional piece is huge, which is why, so this year I finally did something that I've been wanting to do for years, which was study as a holistic pelvic care practitioner. So it's I said it's a form of like holistic healing. It combines women's health physical therapy, so working with the trigger points in the fascia around the pelvic floor, combines that with energy healing to not only restore like physical flow and balance to the pelvic floor, which we all know is really important, but also working with releasing any energetic and emotional stuff from that space, because you can work on your physical body all day long, but if you don't address the emotional piece in terms of like what you might be storing in your body, and also within your cycle, like if you're not speaking up, if you're not expressing your truth, if you're not expressing your emotions, all of that stuff is going to bubble up in your premenstrual phase, and you will feel a little crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to presence that. You can't have a healthy, thriving cycle or a thriving life just by focusing on your physical body. Like the emotional piece is just as important. And for a lot of women, I think that's the missing piece.
Yeah. And so I'd really love to then speak into that, like the piece around the womb healing, because the womb healing, well, what I've learned in kinesiology is your womb, your pelvis is also related to the pelvis. So your jaw is the pelvis of your face, basically. So when you store anger, like if you think about you grit your teeth and you store anger, like that's also connected and totally mirrored in your pelvic bowl. So healing and releasing one is also going to have an impact on the other. So I'd really love you to maybe shed some light around, you know, what are some of the things that as women we store in our womb area, and how that accrues over time, and how it impacts.
Yep. Let me just grab my phone charger. 1 second.
Yep. So many things. It's such an important topic.
I was like,
oh my gosh,
already set up with my laptop charger, and I just.
And this topic, I get so lost on this topic. I'm just going to read you out what Megan has said. She said, Alisha, you opened my eyes to this topic. So that's the topic of cycle and the importance of being in tune with your cycle. I've read so many amazing books on it now. Thank you.
Oh, yay.
Thanks. Yeah, beautiful.
All right. I think it's charging.
Awesome.
We'll see what happens. Anyway, yeah, so pelvic bowl stuff. It's essentially the pelvic bowl, and when I say pelvic bowl, I'm literally meaning the bowl of your pelvis. So if you're like, if you want to like map where that is in your body, you can place your hands on your pubic bone at the front, walk them around to your iliac crest, those little bony protrusions on the side, and then around to the back to your sacrum. So your pelvic bowl is like essentially the root place. It's like your home in your body as a woman. It's where your creative energy lives. It's where any emotional or energetic patterns in your life are going to manifest as physical patterns in your pelvic bowl. So that's like your pelvic floor, your womb, your ovaries, your reproductive system, all of that. And if you've ever been to a yoga class where you've been in like pigeon pose or some kind of hip opener, often they'll say, you know, the hips are the junk drawer of the body. And it's so true, but it's basically like your whole pelvic area. And like essentially emotions are energy in motion, and if we don't express them outward and like actually shift that energy out in a really healthy way, it's going to take up residence in our body. And for women especially, it's around our pelvic bowl area. So that can manifest as like pelvic dysfunction. So for example, for me, what that looked like was the right side is related to the masculine energy, left side is feminine. And so for me, I was finding I was having a lot of tension in the right side of my pelvic floor, my right hip was protruding forward further. So like when I would walk, my right hip was kind of more forward of my left. And so I was overusing that masculine energy, and it was just getting really depleted. And I was holding so much tension there because I was trying to, you know, do my way through life, essentially. So that's one really basic example of how, you know, an energetic pattern in your life might manifest as physical tension. The other thing, of course, is things like I mentioned, where if you're constantly not expressing emotions that you consider to be negative, like anger is a really big one. So many women are like, I'm not angry. The thing is, we all get angry and we need healthy outlets to express that, which is where a lot of the movement and breath and stuff comes in really handy, because we can use that as part of a daily practice to move that anger up and out in a really healthy way, rather than projecting it out at like our loved ones or our colleagues, people like that. And when we don't, that anger really manifests as like stagnant energy and tension in the pelvic bowl. So that's why a big piece, I think, of why a lot of women experience period pain and premenstrual cramps. For me, when that was a part of my experience, not only was I getting the cramps, my cycles were also long. It was like my cycle would be, my period would be trying to start, but everything was like having trouble moving. I wasn't experiencing a lot of like free flowing energy in my pelvic bowl. And then so like the actual blood of my period was like, I would get spotting. It was really slow to start. It was more like a brown color rather than that bright crimson that it should be when it's really healthy. Like getting little clots and things in my blood. Yeah, so that's why it's like, it's really important to pay attention to your cycle, because when you notice these things, then you get to look a little deeper into, you know, what might be going on there. So did that answer your question? I kind of forgot what the question was.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's really important, just in general, just to connect into the power of what we hold there, because there's so much. And I just want to add one thing into that is, like, as women, like, that's an entry point for us as women. So it's literally like we are taking stuff into our body. So in the same way that we eat food and we take it in to our body, like, and then our body processes what we've put into our body, we also take in the way that our mouth does, like food as such, into, you know, our vagina, in through our vagina, up into that area, and our body has to take it in, like that energy that's coming in, and process it as well. So there's so many, you know, triggers that it can bring up when, even when we are having sex and we're, you know, being intimate with our partner or with a man. And I think it's really important to be able to be aware of, like, I know with myself, having sex with like partners that I've had in the past, it would trigger, you know, different emotions to come up, and I'm like, what is going on? Why is that? And I've since learned, obviously, that, you know, there's stuff being held in there. So it's really interesting. There's so much in there, so much in there.
And we can, it's not just related to your cycle. It's like you said, if you've experienced any kind of trauma in your life, whether it's sexual or whether it's just, you know, trauma in your life in general, generational patterns, like behavioral patterns. Like one of the really common things that I see is, my screen's gone dark, that's weird. One of the really common things that I see is that, like, often women learn that in order to be successful, they have to disconnect from their feminine. So their cycles, their intuition, their body wisdom, all of those things. And so, as I said, that's related to the left side of the pelvis. So what I see often in women is when we do like a pelvic bowl meditation or a holistic pelvic care treatment, they find it really challenging to actually keep their awareness on the left side of their pelvis. It's like that side, if you pictured it as like an energetic field, the left side is almost like wide open. And we think that by disconnecting from that side, we can kind of step more into the masculine and be successful. But the left is the side that we receive from. And so when we take our attention away from the left side, basically what we're doing is we're leaving that boundary open for anything and everything to come in. Like, we have to have awareness on the feminine and on the receiving in order to be discerning about what we're actually taking in. Like, whether it's, you know, like you said, sexual partners, whether it's commitments that we're saying yes to, whether it's people that we're allowing in our space, beliefs that we're absorbing, like all of that stuff is inputting all the time. And, you know, we have to be connected to both. That's why it comes back to how we started, really. Have to integrate the masculine and the feminine. We can't have one without the other. They have to dance in unison for us to be able to really thrive.
Yeah, perfect. So tell us what you've got coming up. You've got a beautiful weekend on this weekend. I'm so excited.
Yes. So the next thing I have coming up is a one-day women's retreat called Women Embodied. It's this Saturday on the Gold Coast in Currumbin. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's going to be a whole mixture of different stuff, and I'm keeping a little bit of it secret because I think it's fun to experience on the day. But there'll be like a feminine embodiment yoga practice with like some of those somatic techniques that we talked about, like breath and sounding and dancing, and really just giving you the opportunity to move some energy through your body and really tap in. There's going to be meditation. We'll talk a bit more about the pelvic bowl. There's going to be like an introduction to menstrual cycle awareness and the 4 inner seasons of the cycle. So looking at what kind of shifts you would experience in each phase of the cycle, how you can support yourself through each phase to really thrive, like really practical things of what you can be doing in each season of your cycle in terms of like food you can be eating, exercise that will be nourishing, like work tasks that are going to come really easily to you during that time. All of that stuff we'll be deep diving into. And then we'll be talking a little bit about navigating your emotional landscape. And we have the beautiful Aloise McBride from the Haven Kind coming in to do a havening session. Going to be plant-based catered lunch, cacao ceremony, all of the goodness. So it's going to be really amazing.
I am so excited, and my goodness, if you are drawn to this event, please come along. Honestly, like learning about the cycles, I feel like it's, you know, as we grow up, we sort of hear about, you know, different body parts and stuff that's related to health, but we don't ever really learn about cycles or anything like that. And there's so much to learn about our cycle, about our womb, about how it interacts with our body, our feminine power, so many things. Yeah, so if you feel drawn to this, then I totally implore you to come along. It's going to be such an amazing day. Yeah, and so where else can people contact you? How do people stalk you?
Yeah, I'm probably most active on Instagram. I would say that's the place where I'm around the most. So my handle is Alisha Rose Kruger, but I'll pop the link for that in the comments along with the link for the event this Saturday. But yeah, I'm here on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. If you find one, you'll find all the rest. I'm the same everywhere. So
perfect. And is there anything else that you wish to share with everyone before we say our goodbyes?
There's just one thing that's dropped in, and it's, I don't know why, but I think maybe someone who's watching this needs to hear it. And it's like what you talked about, we don't get a lot of education around our cycles. And what dropped in for me was like, we have, I think as young girls, we're fed this myth that we can get pregnant all of the time. And so there's a lot of fear put into us. It's like our whole sex education is around putting the fear of God into us about like, you can't possibly get pregnant. You need to be like, that's kind of our sex education. It's not actually anything to do with our cycles as women. So I just want to debunk that myth and say that there's actually only 5 or 6 days of the cycle that you're fertile and can get pregnant. Because for me, learning that at like 20, I was like, can't believe no one told me that. So if that's something that you want to learn more about, there's a book that I recommend called Taking Charge of Your Fertility by a woman named Toni Werschler. And I think like just that piece of information, I feel like someone who's watching this needs to hear it, because it's so empowering to learn and understand how your body and your fertility actually works, because there's so much misinformation that we're fed that makes us mistrust our bodies and make choices that we perhaps wouldn't make if we were a little more informed about the way that our body actually works.
Yes, and I have heard from so many friends when they've tried to become pregnant, you know, obviously it hasn't worked straight away because there's that window of opportunity where perhaps they're not, you know, landing on. It's not been as easy as they thought. So I love that you've dropped that in. So love that. Thank you so much. And I'm going to also pop the name of that and Alicia's, how you can stalk Alisha, all her little bits and pieces in the comments below. And one last thing, I want to acknowledge you for how much of a freaking amazing human you are. This woman, if you aren't following her, you need to have her in your life on the regular. She is literally like the walking embodiment of mother love energy. She is so nurturing, so accepting, just completely and entirely non-judgmental. And I really want to acknowledge you for stepping into and choosing you amongst all that you have been through, and also amongst perhaps a message that isn't as common or as easy to perhaps voice. And you know, I just think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. I love everything you're about, and I'm so grateful to have you in my world. I think you are such a beautiful human. I love you so much.
Oh, thank you, Beauty. I love you as well. I'm so glad that we met, and it's just been so amazing to see how our work is kind of coming closer and closer to the same realm the longer that we know each other. So yeah, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to be on here chatting with you. And I'm sure there's going to be many lives to come. I feel that.
Yes. Oh, completely. All right. I will talk to you soon, and thank you for everyone who's joined. If you are watching this and you feel like someone would benefit, then please feel free to tag them below. And if you have any questions for Alisha, she's also going to be able to answer any questions that you pop in the comments. So just pop them down below.
Absolutely.
She'll get back to them, or private message her directly as well. We love you, and yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Talk to you later.